This is Eric from PSXboxIndies.com welcoming you to another long-form video essay about video games. Today's topic is farm sim games, and why Giant Software, of Farming Simulator series fame, is the only developer to really get it right and turn something that is absolutely, undeniably monotonous and tedious into something genuinely fun and enjoyable. This video is focused only on console farming sim games. There might be a PC game out there that is better, but you can't see me, but I'm cartoonishly shrugging my shoulders and making this face right now. I suppose I should also make it clear that this isn't about Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons or Stardew Valley or any other cute games with gardening in them. This is about real farming with big tractors and harvesters and gigantic fields and all that good stuff. Maybe we'll do another video about those cute gardening games. Yeah, we'll probably do a video about those at some point. The first thing you need to know about farming is that it freaking sucks. It's boring and tedious and monotonous and generally awful. It's also an absolutely vital part of modern human civilization because someone has to produce food while everyone else moves to cities and suburbs and can't, or won't, grow their own. Farmers are genuine goddamn heroes that keep the rest of us fed. So give some respect to those folks that have chosen to do the hard, dirty work because no one else wants to. And double respect to the migrant workers, including and especially the illegal ones, who do most of the hardest jobs during harvest season because soft Americans sure as hell won't do them. Seriously, our country would starve without Mexican workers. So why don't we make it easier for them to come here legally instead of wasting another second of thought or another dollar on a big stupid pointless wall to keep them out. Back on topic though. Farming blows. But under all the dust and dirt and tedium, it is also incredibly satisfying and rewarding. So how do you smooth out the boring hard work part and get to the satisfying and rewarding part quick enough to create a video game that is actually fun to play? By not forcing you to do most of the boring stuff, that's how. Which is where the Farming Simulator series massively succeeds and pretty much every other farming game utterly fails. Though it didn't really hit its groove until Farming Simulator 15, the core philosophy of making farming as easy and painless as possible has been present since the very first game, simply titled Farming Simulator, hit Xbox 360 in 2013. This means letting you instantly switch vehicles with the press of a button. It means hiring AI workers to do all the plowing and seeding and harvesting. It means having options to adjust things like whether your crops will wither if you don't take care of them properly or harvest them fast enough, or whether you need to fertilize or otherwise treat your soil, or whether you have to periodically plow a field between plantings, or other options to greatly speed up how fast stuff grows. From the very start, Farming Simulator has given players options to make the game as much of a real farming simulation or as much of a mostly hands-off management sim as you want. And that's absolutely brilliant. Most other farming games either do not have such options or they are incredibly poorly implemented. Some games will let you swap machines, but only if you go through the menu and wait through a load time first. Or some games will let you hire AI workers, but they'll either not be visible in your field at all and will just take a predetermined amount of time before your field magically changes, or they'll be visible but be the slowest, most inefficient and inept drivers possible. Or other games will insist on making you do every step of the process: plowing, planting, fertilizing, weeding, insecticides, irrigation, which is just a total drag. And basically none of the other farming games out there will give you options to adjust difficulty or realism to make the game more accessible. Aside from insisting on being real-ass farming sims with no concessions made to make the game more fun for anyone besides real-life farmers or masochists, the other farming games share a host of common issues as well. Most of them will have either zero real-world licensed equipment, or they'll have very few. And in both cases, the total number of machines is always hilariously tiny compared to Farming Simulator's already massive and still growing fleet of real licensed vehicles. The other farming games are also all generally, well, janky and clunky and don't feel very good to play. It isn't as if Farming Simulator doesn't still have plenty of jank in the tank, but compared to every other farming game, it is incredibly smooth and intuitive. Other games also pretty much always require multiple button presses to do the same thing that you can do in Farming Simulator with one button, which I think says a lot about them. What other games am I specifically talking about, by the way? Professional Farmer 2017 and its follow-up, Professional Farmer American Dream, are both putrid. They're ugly and have the worst implementation of vehicle switching and AR workers out of any game on this list. Farmer's Dynasty actually has some interesting stuff where you have to rebuild structures and fix stuff with hand tools, but the actual farming is abysmal and is boring and tedious with few quality of life features to ease the monotony. Real Farm is awkward and leans super hard into being a hardcore sim, while offering basically no options to make it easier or more accessible and fun. I should mention that Real Farm did just get a new and free gold update that promised to improve the graphics and fix a bunch of other stuff, but it's still pretty awful. It's admirable that they actually updated a terrible niche game 4 years after it launched, but the fundamental problems with Real Farm still remain. There is one bright spot among these other farming games, though, and that is Pure Farming 2018. Pure Farming 2018 has visible AI workers, though they're dumb as a box of rocks. I mean, just watch. It has nice presentation and some interesting crops and machines you won't find in Farming Simulator. But it also wants to be much more of a realistic simulation with few options to make it more accessible, so it's hard to recommend. All of that is why the Farming Simulator series rules over all of these other pretenders to the crown. Giant Software recognized early on that concessions needed to be made in order for the game to appeal to a wider audience, so they have added a ton of options to make the game as accessible as possible. The interesting thing is that as they have added more options and accessibility features with each new entry, they have also added even more simulation features. That's the beauty of Farming Simulator, though. It can be as easy and accessible or you want it, or it can be an incredibly detailed, hardcore, realistic farming simulation if you want it to be. Or it can be somewhere in between. For me personally, as much as I do love playing these games, I have to admit that I turn pretty much all of the realism options off. I want stuff to grow as fast as possible, plants not to wither, not to have to plow fields regularly, not worry about weeds, don't worry about driving over crops and ruining them, and I hire AI workers to do pretty much everything that the game allows me to. I can still have a ton of fun though, because moving equipment around, buying new equipment, emptying AI harvesters and delivering crops to buyers, and just jumping around and keeping an eye on everything and managing it is really satisfying and fun. Not only that, but having the AI do the tedious stuff means you have time to do other things that are more fun, such as taking care of animals, which requires hauling water and food for them around, cutting and collecting grass, turning cut grass so it dries out and turns to hay, cleaning up their waste, delivering milk and wool. It's all really time intensive, but a lot of fun and satisfying. Or you can do logging and figuring out ways to overcome the janky controls and unpredictable physics of having potentially dozens of blocks of wood all sitting in a trailer together. One wrong move and they'll all bounce around and fly all over the map. Or you can cut down trees and plow new fields to expand your land. Or you can use the terraforming feature in Farming Simulator 19 to totally change the landscape of the world. And there's a ton more to do even than that. My suggestion to new players who want to dabble in these games is to 1. Play either Farming Simulator 17 or 19, or wait for Farming Simulator 22 that comes out later this year. And 2, don't worry about treating it like a hardcore simulation, and just turn off any options that don't sound fun, and only do the things that you enjoy. There's no shame in making it easier. I'll have to admit that the first couple of hours playing will be pretty overwhelming and boring and frustrating. But once you start getting bigger and better equipment and can branch out and do the other things that the games offer, it becomes incredibly satisfying and fun to play and makes it worth it. My third suggestion is to take advantage of mods to get new equipment, new maps, infinite money, and a whole bunch of other stuff that can make the games even more fun. Farming Simulator 17 and 19 both have tons of mods available, so take advantage of them. And yes, I'm talking about console games with mods in them. It has to be noted that Sony treats mods differently than Microsoft does, so mods on PS4 are pretty limited compared to mods on Xbox. So I recommend playing Farming Simulator on Xbox instead of PlayStation. To conclude, Farming Simulator games can be very fun, but they are not all created equally. The Farming Simulator series is the biggest and best and the most fun, and the only games I recommend for a reason. They offer a wealth of options and quality of life features to adjust the game to your liking that other games simply cannot match. They will satisfy you whether you want something relatively easy and accessible or a hardcore realistic farm simulation. You can play however you want and do whatever you want, and eventually you'll be hooked, so give them a try. Thank you for watching our look at farming sim games and why Giant Software's Farming Simulator series still dominates over all challengers. Please like and subscribe for more long-form videos just like this one.